It hurts. There's no way around that, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you because you felt it the same way I did. Losing a game like this, especially against a familiar face at quarterback, stays with you longer than a normal loss. You sit with it, you replay it, you ask yourself how it slipped away. But once that initial frustration settles, once you step back and really look at where this team stands, the picture is not nearly as dark as it feels in the immediate aftermath. The Detroit Lions are coming off a difficult loss, yes, but they are absolutely not out of this playoff race, and that is the key point that can't get lost in the emotion of the moment. What this entire situation really comes down to is the path forward, and that path is still very real. The math is uncomfortable, the margin for error is gone, but the opportunity is right there. The Lions have to win out, and that part is non-negotiable. At the same time, there are teams directly in front of them that can be caught, and the most important one is Chicago. When you break it down clearly, Chicago is 2 games ahead right now, with 2 games to play before the head-to-head matchup against Detroit. The Lions need to take care of their own business in those 2 games. Chicago needs to lose one of theirs. Then it comes down to that final game, head-to-head, with everything on the line. If Detroit wins that matchup, the tiebreakers fall their way because of the season sweep, and suddenly the Lions are in. That realization alone changes the entire mood of the conversation. It turns panic into focus. And when you actually look at Chicago's upcoming schedule, it's not unreasonable at all to believe they drop one. They still have to play Green Bay at home and then go on the road to San Francisco. This is a young team that hasn't exactly been blowing people out. Their net point differential on the season is modest, and a lot of their wins have come against struggling teams. They've had good moments, no question, but they haven't consistently dominated. Asking them to lose one of those 2 games is not some wild fantasy scenario. It's realistic. Then there's Green Bay, another team sitting in the mix. The Packers are ahead, but they've beaten the Lions twice, which complicates things. Still, there's a scenario there too. If Green Bay loses 2 games and Detroit wins out, the Lions jump them in the standings. Green Bay still has Chicago and Baltimore on the schedule, and that Baltimore game matters more than people realize. Baltimore is fighting for its own playoff life, playing motivated football, and that makes them a much more dangerous opponent than the record alone might suggest. Detroit can actually help its own cause indirectly by winning its games and keeping pressure on everyone else in the race. All of this only works if Detroit does its part, and that brings us back to who this team actually is. Right now, the Lions are 8-6, sitting in 3rd place in the division, and that alone doesn't tell the full story. Look at the points. Detroit has scored significantly more points than any team in the division and owns the best net point differential in the NFC North. In fact, across the entire NFC, only 2 teams are ahead of them in net points. That matters. Over a full season, that kind of differential usually tells you exactly what kind of team you're watching. This is not a middling, lucky, overachieving group. This is a team that, on a macro level, is playing better than its record. And that's where the frustration really comes from. This Lions team feels like it should not be in 3rd place. It feels like a team that let moments slip away rather than a team that's fundamentally broken. They've done this while facing one of the toughest schedules in the league. And now, ironically, the final stretch offers matchups that are more favorable than much of what they've already survived. That doesn't guarantee anything, but it does keep hope alive. The loss itself exposed real issues, especially defensively, and it's important to be honest about that. Situational defense has been a problem. Too many points allowed at the end of the first half. Too many breakdowns when the clock should be an ally. The numbers back it up. The Lions have surrendered a large chunk of points in the final minute and final 4 minutes of the first half this season, ranking near the top of the league in those categories. That's not talent. That's execution and decision-making in specific moments. There's also the reality of injuries and personnel limitations. Losing both starting safeties for the rest of the year matters. Losing a key corner matters. Those absences show up most clearly against precision passing attacks that can exploit space and timing. Even so, there's a strange contradiction here. Individually, many of the defensive players are grading well. Assignments are being executed, effort is there, but holes in the scheme and the lack of playmakers in critical moments are still costing this team drives, yards, and ultimately points. Offensively, the loss wasn't about a lack of production through the air. It came down to balance. When one team runs for nearly 160 yards on 29 carries while the other is held to around 3.5 yards per carry, that's the difference in a game like this. Detroit couldn't control the ground the way it usually does, and that took away one of its biggest advantages. You can survive a quarterback throwing for big numbers if you shut down the run, but you can't let both happen at once. All of this leads to the same conclusion. The Lions are flawed, banged up, and facing long odds, but they are very much alive. The path is narrow, the pressure is intense, and there's no room left to stumble. But if this team keeps winning, the rest of the league will do some of the work for them. So now I want to hear from you, as fans watching this unfold in real time, looking at the path, the numbers, and what this team has shown all season. Do you still believe the Lions can punch their ticket to the playoffs, or does it feel like too much has to go right for this run to continue? This is where the conversation shifts from hope to urgency, because once you accept that the door is still open, you also have to accept how unforgiving the next few weeks are going to be. There's no safety net anymore. Every snap, every drive, every decision carries weight, and that reality is something this team has to embrace rather than fear. The Lions don't get the luxury of easing into games or figuring things out by halftime. From here on out, the standard has to be immediate execution, because the margin is razor thin. When you look at what remains on the schedule, none of it is easy, but it is manageable. These are games Detroit can win if it plays to its identity. Physical up front, efficient on offense, opportunistic on defense. The frustrating part about the recent loss is not that it exposed a lack of talent, but that it exposed how small lapses can undo so much good work. Situational football has become the defining issue, giving up points late in the half, allowing long drives when the opponent should be under pressure, failing to flip momentum with one defining defensive play. Those are the moments that separate teams that cruise into the postseason from teams that are forced to claw their way in. And yet, even with those issues, the larger picture keeps pointing back to the same conclusion. This team is better than its record. The numbers don't lie. Over the course of 14 games, outscoring opponents by a wide margin, sitting near the top of the conference in net points, and doing it against a difficult slate of opponents tells you that Detroit belongs in the playoff conversation. The standings might not reflect it yet, but the performance profile does. That's why this stretch feels so tense. It's not about rebuilding or evaluating for next year. It's about finishing something that's already been built. Defensively, the challenge is clear. You don't need perfection, but you need one or two game-changing moments. A sack that kills a drive, a pass breakup on third down, a takeaway that flips field position. Those plays have been there in flashes, like the interception early in the last game, but they haven't shown up consistently when the game is on the line. With injuries in the secondary, the margin for error is smaller, which makes discipline and communication even more critical. You can't afford confusion, busted zones, or hesitation. Against playoff-level quarterbacks, that's an invitation to be picked apart. Offensively, the identity has to return to balance and control. When this team runs the ball effectively, everything else opens up. Play action works. The quarterback plays freer. The pass rush on the other side slows down. When that balance disappears, the Lions become easier to defend, and the game turns into a track meet they don't always want. The loss showed that clearly. This offense can score, but it still needs to dictate terms, not react to them. There are also smaller details that matter more now than ever. Special teams decisions, roster usage, situational awareness. When you're elevating players from the practice squad and asking rookies to take on meaningful roles, execution has to be clean. There's no room for confusion on returns, no room for wasted snaps, no room for mental errors. In games that are decided by a possession, those details aren't footnotes. They're the story. The emotional side of this is impossible to ignore. This fan base has lived through seasons where December was about draft position, not playoff math. That's not where this team is anymore, and that shift comes with pressure. Meaningful games hurt more when they're lost, but they also mean more when they're won. The Lions are playing games that matter deep into the season, and now they're being asked to respond to adversity, not just success. That's part of becoming a legitimate contender. What happens next will define how this season is remembered, not the loss itself, but the response to it. Winning out is a tall order, but it's not an impossible one. Other teams will stumble. Doors will crack open. The Lions just have to be ready to walk through instead of watching them close. If they do, all of this frustration turns into fuel. If they don't, it becomes another lesson learned the hard way. Now it's on you as fans to stay locked in, because this stretch is going to test belief as much as execution. If you followed this team all season, you know what they're capable of when things click. So as this push continues and the pressure keeps rising, do you think this group has what it takes to handle must-win football and finish the job when everything is on the line? And if you want to keep following every step of this run with me, make sure you're subscribed, leave a like on the video, and stay tuned, because what happens next is going to define this season. Now, as we move into the final stretch, it's all about staying mentally sharp and sticking to the fundamentals that have made the Lions competitive this season. There's no more time to experiment or make excuses. The identity of this team has been built over weeks of progress and setbacks, but now it's about executing consistently on the field when it matters most. No more what-ifs or missed opportunities. The Lions have fought to get into this position, and now it's their chance to prove they belong. For the defense, this means no more mental lapses, No more giving up points late in the half or allowing easy conversions on 3rd and long. The secondary, depleted though it may be, has to rise to the occasion. Players like Amadi Oruwariye and Jeff Okudah, who have had their ups and downs this season, will need to step up in a way they haven't before. The injury bug, unfortunately, continues to take a toll on the defense, but there's still enough talent on this roster to make plays. It's about being disciplined in coverage, tackling in space, and finishing plays when the game is on the line. And when you talk about finishing plays, we can't forget about the front seven. The pass rush has been up and down at times, but Aiden Hutchinson continues to be a force to reckon with. His impact is undeniable, and if he can continue to dominate in key moments, the defense will have the ability to disrupt opposing quarterbacks and change the course of a game. But it's not just about Hutchinson. The Lions need to get more from their defensive line as a whole. They have to stop the run and create pressure on the quarterback, forcing the kind of uncomfortable throws that win games. Offensively, the key for Detroit will be to play with balance, like they've done at their best. Jared Goff has been solid, but the play calling needs to give him the freedom to operate in a rhythm that controls the pace of the game. The run game has to return to its early season form. The offensive line must continue to assert its dominance up front, giving the running backs the lanes they need to break off big gains. The combination of Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift is crucial. If both can stay healthy and consistently produce, Detroit can establish the ground game that takes the pressure off Goff and opens up the passing attack. One of the biggest reasons for optimism as the Lions make this final push is the talent at wide receiver. Amon-Ra St. Brown continues to be one of the top young receivers in the league, and he's shown time and again that he can be a go-to target when the game is on the line. His route running, his ability to get open in crucial moments, and his toughness make him a player that defenses struggle to deal with. But it's not just about St. Brown. Players like Josh Reynolds and Khalif Raymond are stepping up and becoming more involved in the offense, providing Goff with multiple options in the passing game. The balance between the ground attack and the aerial assault will be key to keeping opposing defenses on their toes. However, as much as the offense and defense need to step up, special teams can't be overlooked. With games this close, every possession matters. Whether it's a well-placed punt, a big return, or a crucial field goal, special teams need to be sharp. The return game, in particular, has been inconsistent this year, and the Lions can't afford to make mistakes in this department. A big return could be the difference between starting a drive at your own 30-yard line versus your own 5. It's these small moments that often decide the outcome of tight games. The mental toughness of this team will be tested like never before. Every game left on the schedule is essentially a playoff game, and the Lions have to treat them that way. They can't afford to drop any more games to teams they should beat. If Detroit can continue to take care of business and finish strong, there's a very real chance they'll punch their ticket to the postseason. But that's the big question. Can they handle the pressure? If they can put together solid performances in these final weeks, the rest of the NFC will take notice. The Lions have all the pieces to be a dangerous playoff team, but they have to prove they can put it all together when it matters most. Whether it's on offense, defense, or special teams, each player has to make plays that matter in the most critical moments. As fans, we know the journey hasn't been perfect, but that's what makes this team so compelling. They've shown resilience in the face of adversity, and they've fought through injuries and tough losses. Now, as we head into these final games, the question remains, can they finish what they started? So, what do you think, Lions fans? Do you believe this team can rise to the occasion and make the playoffs? Or do you think the road will be too tough to navigate? Let me know in the comments below. If you're as excited as I am for this playoff push, make sure to hit that subscribe button, give the video a thumbs up, and stay tuned for more updates as the Lions continue their hunt for a postseason spot. Let's see where this journey takes us. At this stage of the season, everything compresses. Weeks feel shorter, mistakes feel louder, and every result around the league suddenly matters more than your own. You're watching not just the Lions game, but scoreboards, scenarios, standings, and tiebreakers, because that's what meaningful December football looks like. This is the reality the Lions have earned for themselves, and whether it ends in celebration or disappointment, it's a sign of how far this team has come. What stands out the most right now is that the Lions are no longer trying to convince anyone they belong. The numbers already say it. The tape already says it. This team has consistently played at a level that matches playoff caliber football. The frustration comes from knowing that a handful of moments, not entire games, are the reason this race feels so tight. A missed stop here, a breakdown there, a drive that slips away when it shouldn't. Over a long season, those moments add up, and now the Lions are forced to be perfect because of them. That's also why the mindset has to be ruthless. There's no room for playing not to lose. You don't protect anything at this point. You attack. You trust what you've built. You lean into the identity that has allowed this team to outscore opponents and stay competitive against one of the toughest schedules in the league. Playing cautiously now would be the worst possible response. The Lions have been at their best when they're aggressive, physical, and confident in who they are. Another important part of this stretch is emotional control. These are the games where momentum swings fast, where one bad series can spiral if you let it. The good teams don't panic. They respond. They give up a score and come right back. They face adversity and treat it as part of the game, not a turning point. That's the growth curve the Lions are still on, and these final games are the ultimate test of it. The fan base feels it too. You can sense the tension, but also the belief. This isn't blind optimism. It's grounded in what we've actually seen on the field all season. Competitive performances, resilience, an ability to respond after losses instead of collapsing. That's why this push still feels alive. The Lions aren't asking for miracles. They're asking for execution. If this team wins, the rest will sort itself out. Other teams will drop games. Pressure will shift. Opportunities will appear. The Lions just have to be ready when they do. And if they get in, nobody is going to be excited to see them on the other side of the bracket, because this is not a team that plays scared or backs down. This is the stretch that defines seasons. Not the start, not the middle, but the moments when everything is on the line and there's nowhere to hide. The Lions are standing right in the middle of that moment right now. So stay locked in, because every snap from here on out matters. If you want to keep following this ride, make sure you're subscribed, leave a like on the video, and keep the discussion going in the comments. The next few weeks are going to tell us everything about this team, and we're going to break it all down together right here. From here on out, it really becomes a test of discipline and belief, and those two things are harder to sustain than talent. Talent gets you into games, but discipline and belief are what carry you through the moments when fatigue sets in and pressure starts to creep into every decision. The Lions are at that exact crossroads. They are good enough, but now they have to be precise enough. What can't be ignored is how thin the margin truly is. One blown assignment on defense, one missed block in the run game, one forced throw instead of taking the check down, and suddenly a season's worth of work is hanging by a thread. That's not meant to scare anyone. It's meant to underline the reality of where this team is. They don't need to reinvent themselves. They need to trust the details that got them here and execute them cleanly for 4 quarters, every week. This is also where leadership becomes visible, not in speeches or sound bites, but in how players respond after a bad drive or a sudden momentum shift. You watch the body language. You watch how quickly the offense gets lined up after a mistake. You watch whether the defense comes out flying or tentative after giving up points. These are the moments that separate teams still learning how to win from teams that expect to win. There's also something important about how this roster has been built. This is not a team relying on one superstar to carry them. It's a collective effort. When things go right, it's because the offensive